Germany, Soviet military units went on special alert as remnants of the old Communist Party called an emergency Congress in yet another desperate bid to salvage their once invincible grip on power. The East German prosecutor filed criminal corruption charges against the, until recently, iron ruler of the country, Erich Honecker. In Bulgaria, the second purge in 4 weeks swept 32 hardliners out of Bulgarian party leadership. In Czechoslovakia, reformers put new heat on the communists to take a strictly minority role in a coalition government. From East Berlin, Tom Fenton begins our report on the changing face of communism.
The East German Communist Party met in extraordinary session tonight to declare itself a democratic socialist party. Delegates hoped their mass conversion would look convincing. It's a last-ditch attempt to salvage a small share of national power for a party whose members are quitting in droves and whose former leaders are charged with corruption. The communists have already given in to the major demands of the opposition. In an historic agreement with non-communist groups last night, they promised free elections in May and a new constitution.
On the key question of reunification with West Germany, public opinion here is rapidly evolving. A majority of people in recent demonstrations clearly favor it. And if free elections give this country a truly representative government, then a decision could be made as early as next year.
It's the rapid collapse of law and authority that is convincing many East Germans their separate state has no future. Citizens' vigilante groups have been marching on buildings of the despised state security service. The people inside have oppressed us for 40 years, this man says. In most cases, citizens' groups have been arriving too late to stop the shredding of incriminating documents. Police, who once used brutal methods to crush disorders, now look on helplessly as ordinary citizens vent their anger against the system. We are called the People's Police, this captain says, so we protect the people. The system that was imposed on this country in the name of German-born Karl Marx was what differentiated this Germany from the other Germany. And tonight, that system is effectively dead here. Tom Fenton, CBS News, East Berlin.
In Czechoslovakia, a new communist premier sat down with freedom-minded opposition leaders trying to form a new government. CBS News correspondent Anthony Mason has been following the demise of communism in Prague. Anthony?
Dan, it looks like 41 years of communist rule in Czechoslovakia are truly about to end. After 2 weeks of tense political negotiations, during which the government looked at any moment like it might collapse, the newly appointed communist prime minister conceded today that he was prepared to form a government in which the communists were in a minority. Late tonight, all of Czechoslovakia's political groups, including the reform movement, reached agreement on a framework for that new government. Now, it must be formally approved this weekend, but tonight reform leaders could not contain their excitement. When this is over, one said, it will be written that we ran 100 meters in 8 seconds. Dan?
Anthony, why, after all this time, after dragging their feet, why have the communists suddenly caved in?
Well, first it was the enormous political pressure from the rallies that you yourself saw in these very streets. But also, as one of the reform leaders here said tonight, that the communists over time just had to lose their fear. They had to understand, he said, that we didn't want to hurt them, that we just wanted them to take their pensions and go away.
Anthony Mason in Czechoslovakia, thanks. Now, inside the Soviet Union itself, in Moscow, the Central Committee of the Soviet Communist Party has called a special meeting for tomorrow to discuss the unprecedented threat to its authority. For the first time yesterday, a Soviet republic, the Baltic state of Lithuania, defied Mikhail Gorbachev and the Kremlin and voted to end one-party communist rule. In an exclusive interview to be broadcast in full on Face the Nation this Sunday, Soviet Foreign Minister Edward Shevardnadze told Leslie Stahl the Kremlin can resolve the Lithuanian challenge without using military force.
You have pledged not to take any actions in Eastern Europe. Will you also pledge not to take any actions against the republics if this is what they want?
What do you mean?
Military action, I mean crackdown.
I've been able to speak about this a number of times. Perestroika, democratization, new thinking. rule out the possibility of the use of military force and of any repression, any crackdown.
Internally.
We have been acting and we will be acting on the basis of persuasion.
Following up on the Malta Summit Conference, Shevardnadze told Leslie Stahl that he has proposed talks on reducing the level of arms in Central America. Still to come on your CBS Evening News, correspondent David Martin on the National Guard and the war on drugs. And Richard Schlesinger on Madison Avenue and the fall of the wall. Secretary Richard Cheney approved $70 million today to pay for the National Guard's assistance in a state-by-state crackdown on drug crime. This is part of the $450 million Congress earmarked overall this year for Defense Department involvement in anti-drug activities. CBS News Defense Department correspondent David Martin has been looking into the National Guard's new, expanded, and controversial role.
The start of another day in the drug wars. District of Columbia police sweep through a housing complex in a neighborhood so notorious for drugs, they call it Wild West City. But today, the police brought reinforcements, the National Guard.
When I seen them, I was surprised. I was glad, you know.
Because of the danger of retribution, the National Guard has asked that no faces be shown. But on any given day, about 1,000 National Guardsmen across the country are doing everything from hauling away abandoned cars used for stashing drugs to conducting search and destroy missions against marijuana fields. Annual cost, $70 million. This day, the Guardsmen have marched unarmed into southeast Washington, not as soldiers, but as laborers. This admitted drug user is upset because the Guard is boarding up her apartment. That means she can't move back into this crack house as soon as the police leave.
If they don't board up there, we coming in again, there might be more people. You might find a body in there. There's no telling what you're going to find in there.
Every morning in the nation's capital, teams of National Guardsmen set out with police to board up crack houses.
This is about the 50th crack house the D.C. National Guard has sealed up in the past month. No one here will tell you they're winning the war against drugs, just fighting a holding action. Do you think this is going to do any good, boarding up this window?
Well, it'll hold them off for a little while.
About 10,000 containers come through the Port of Miami each month. Customs had enough agents to search only about 4% of them. But now the Guard helps with the grimy, time-consuming job of inspecting a container of scrap aluminum or crawling into the nooks and crannies where drugs might be hidden.
With the Guard here, we're looking at as much as 40% of the cargo coming in from the risk countries.
There haven't been any drug seizures at the Port of Miami since the Guard started working here 7 months ago, which either means the smugglers have been forced to take other routes or they've gotten better at hiding their drugs.
Policemen down here running all over the place.
Back in the District of Columbia, a Guard chopper serves as an aerial command post for a drug bust by the D.C. police.
Okay, I can see a police car. I got the bus. Okay, everything down there is more or less under control.
Under control, but only for the moment. Will the Guard make a difference? No one knows. But like almost everything else in the war on drugs, it seems worth trying.
Yeah, this is it, y'all. This is what we out here for.
David Martin, CBS News, Washington.
The worst mass murder in the history of Canada set off a national debate today about gun laws that allowed the killer to buy a semi-automatic rifle and about the roots of violence against women. Harold Dow is our man in Montreal.
25-year-old Marc Le Pen is the man who killed 14 women and wounded 13 others on the University of Montreal campus 2 days ago before killing himself. This is the neighborhood where he lived. Poor, drugs, crime, prostitution. Le Pen was described as a loner, had very few friends. Some say he was a man who hated women.
You always left by the back. That was really weird. Nobody knew him around here.
I think there are people like Marc Le Pen living on every block. And some of them have decided they have a suicidal streak. They're going to go out in a blaze of glory. And glory to them means killing as many people as they possibly can.
On the University of Montreal campus, engineering classes were canceled. Students came in to pick up their books. Some came to receive counseling.
We all feel implicated in this, and we all feel like we could have been there.
Professor Adrian Cernia was there. He was giving his class an exam when the gunman walked in.
The way he maneuvered his gun was like a professional, used to the guns.
When the gunman announced that he was fighting against feminism, 23-year-old Natalie Provost spoke up.
We are just women who study in engineering. We don't fight to prove that we are women. We don't fight to prove that we are best of the men.
Will you ever forget his face?
No. Neither his face nor the faces of my students who were killed.
Harold Dow, CBS News, Montreal.
Department today reported the economy generated a higher than expected 210,000 new jobs in November, but analysts weren't cheering the news. That's because the civilian unemployment rate hit a 10-month high, edging up to 5.4%. And all the new jobs were created in the service sector, with the higher-paying manufacturing jobs down for the 8th straight month. CBS News business correspondent Ray Brady looked into those figures.
Here's where the statistics are people in this Boston unemployment line. It's an area where many of the jobless worked in computers, once America's top growth industry, an industry employing the kind of people who usually don't get laid off.
The first thing that hits is anger, and it's a why me.
It hurts to be out of work because you can't, it makes you feel you can't provide.
For your family.
Right.
Company after company in high tech has been laying off, helping to raise today's unemployment figure to 5.4%. But pink slips have also been coming in other industries, from giant blue chip companies like Chrysler, Kodak, Motorola, McGraw-Hill. More than 100,000 layoffs announced in just the past 10 weeks.
The increase in the unemployment rate today simply confirms that the U.S. economy has slowed.
Altogether, I think the economy is in a mini recession.
Still, at this job center in the high-tech country outside Boston, programmers and other technicians keep writing resumes, hoping that despite today's jobless figures, they'll somehow land a job.
It's discouraging, but you got to keep on going. I've got a wife, 2 kids, a home, the whole thing.
The unemployment rate as we go into 1990 will in fact continue to increase as the economy continues to slow even more.
One reason for that view, there's no pickup expected in such key manufacturing industries as trucks, autos, and houseware. Housing's in a slump, and Dan, the belief is that the defense industry may soon be in a slump as well.
Ray, what's the read on how bad this can get and how long it lasts?
Well, if the consumer keeps spending money, that could keep the economy moving along at least at this slow pace. And that's why what happens this Christmas shopping season could go a long way in determining how we feel next year.
So the next couple of weeks can be critical. Thanks, Ray. I'll have the story of what's happening in the Philippines in a moment, so stay here with us.
Ladies, now you can
Philippine
enjoy.
coup attempt has ended in Manila, but important to remember the Philippines has about 7,000 islands, and some 400 Army rebels are still in control of key installations on the comparatively large central island of Cebu. They're threatening to blow up military planes at a Philippine air base on Cebu if government troops attack. Back in the capital, Manila, President Corazon Aquino lashed out at her political rivals today, apparently heeding her advisors in Manila and Washington, who say she has to get a lot tougher to stay in power. John Sheehan reports.
President Aquino told a pro-government rally today that she will never resign, while opponents charged that she is now a puppet of the generals who saved her from the latest military coup attempt. The crowd was estimated at 100,000, but many were government workers or employees of commercial companies who said that their bosses had ordered them to attend.
The president came here looking for something she needs badly, some visible public support to counterbalance the armed anti-Aquino movement in the military.
Let us condemn the dastardly act of these rebels.
She struck back at her vice president, Salvador Laurel, for demanding that she step down. Does he think I'm stupid? Asked Aquino. That stupid, I'm not.
The president does not realize that this instability, this coup is not yet over.
360 miles south of Manila, rebel soldiers still dominate a city. In fact, an entire island.
The bottom line is the government should listen to the grievances of the people. They've been suffering already.
At the end of a long bridge, government forces are ready to move.
I am ready to take drastic action against them if it is the last resort.
After one contingent of rebels capitulated yesterday in Manila, Army commanders said they captured some documents which also indicate that the revolt is not over.
They are going to go to a period of rebellion, which is accompanied by economic sabotage, fomenting political instability.
Now more than ever, Aquino is dependent on the gun. In desperation, she is demanding that Congress hand her broad powers for the government to search and seize without warrants and to imprison people without trial. John Sheehan, CBS News, Manila.
The Middle East peace process appeared at least to inch forward today as Arabs and Israelis marked the second anniversary of the Palestinian uprising known as the Intifada. While Israeli troops confined more than 1 million Arabs to their homes in the West Bank and Gaza, Israeli leaders agreed to send Foreign Minister Aarons to Washington for exploratory talks with the U.S. and Egypt on possible elections in those occupied territories. As our veteran Middle East correspondent Bob Simon reports, the second year the uprising has been a sobering experience for both sides.
Eastern Europe's Intifada got results in weeks. The Palestinian Intifada, 2 years later, slogs on, a dance of death in a Gaza graveyard.
Palestinians, the only problem in world not answered.
Much activity, little motion. But the Israelis now realize they cannot end the uprising without a political settlement. They know that subjugation is out of season. So will they move? Will they consider a Palestinian state?
If someone dreams about the 22nd Arab state, a PLO state in Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza district, he should forget about it.
The Palestinians know they've been forgotten to a large extent, that their rage is no longer the rage of the Western world. So will they settle for less?
Drama, the real drama that is taking place is the drama of the birth of a Palestinian state.
What this has come to mean on the other side of that metaphor is a continuing parade of casualties, wounded warriors, younger all the time. An economy so decimated that many Palestinians are living hand to mouth. Occasional symbolic victories giving only temporary relief from grim realities, dead children acclaimed as martyrs. Israelis have their victims too, and their heroes. Amos Ittel receives a hero's welcome when he returns home after 6 months. From the front line? No, from jail, for refusing to serve in what he calls an army of occupation. There is resistance, there are protests, this ballet, for example, against the government's hardline policy. But they are staged for a select audience. Israelis, for the most part, are learning to ignore the Intifada.
It's much more normal to hear people talking about, Maccabi Tel Aviv's basketball season or, the price of a new apartment or something than the Intifada.
But if some Israelis are relieved to see attention shift to Prague and Berlin, others worry that if the Cold War is really ending, the Americans may not have such a strong need for such an expensive friend in the Middle East. Israelis and Palestinians stuck in their history at a time of change, scrawling and ignoring messages to each other on walls which are not coming down. Bob Simon, CBS News, Gaza.
In Anchorage, Alaska, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service officially reported today that the massive oil spill from the Exxon Corporation Valdez supertanker last March has now killed between 90,000 and 270,000 seabirds, making it the deadliest such oil spill in history. The report said it could take up to 70 years for wildlife in the Exxon spill zone to recover. That really loves a wall, and its name is Madison Avenue. As Richard Schlesinger reports tonight, advertising agencies are finding all-purpose symbolism in the most famous collapse of a wall since Jericho.
When East German authorities started tearing down the Berlin Wall, historians said, this is a momentous occasion. This is the beginning of a new era. That's what historians said.
And we said, what a wonderful moment in history. What a wonderful thing if we could devise a commercial that celebrated that moment.
Pepsi's ad started running nationally this week. Its soft sell, everything's beautiful approach has raised the hackles of some critics.
The gift of freedom is the greatest gift of all. A message from the Pepsi-Cola Company.
It really trivializes the meaning of what's happening. What are they saying? That these people are freeing themselves from political oppression, freeing themselves so that they can drink Pepsi?
Here on Madison Avenue, there is a never-ending scramble for that one great idea that will get attention. The Berlin Wall may seem like the perfect symbol here, but the desirable younger audience may be too young to remember the wall's significance.
Students are not very excited about the fall of the wall, and they're misreading this on Madison Avenue, or wherever they write this copy these days.
The Pepsi generation is not the first to recognize the symbolic power of the wall. Media-savvy presidents have used it for years.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
But that was before advertisers decided glasnost is glitzy and perestroika is profitable. Now, in addition to Pepsi, AT&T and the Quintessence Perfume Company are using the wall to sell. Quintessence staged a scene of a grandfather-grandson reunion, portraying the Russian bear as no more threatening than a teddy bear.
In a sense, it's a story about dreams coming true for millions of East Germans. And that's what our fragrance business is all about, making dreams come true.
The fall of the wall is a dream come true for world leaders, but they're having trouble deciding how to react to it. Advertisers had no problem whatsoever.
Action!
Richard Schlesinger, CBS News, New York.
Hey, this is America. All part of our world tonight. Bob Schieffer will be here with the news tomorrow, followed later by